Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome back to math. We are continuing to learn about how to recognize fractions. So let's get started with today's learning target. I can explain that the unit fraction represents one part of a whole. So today, to start off our lesson, we're going to be using this little text box as a guide to kind of give us another visual of how fractions work. Okay, so I'm going to zoom this in just a little bit more. There we go, so you can see it better. Okay, so I'm going to be using these shapes so that you can see it a little bit more clearer than it is on the piece of paper, okay? So right here it says the same whole partitions into different unit fractions, okay? So this shape right here, so this shape is half of this shape. So we're going to say, because this is a trapezoid, so this trapezoid is half of this hexagon because it takes two trapezoids to cover a hexagon. And I know it's a little hard to see on the camera, but there are two trapezoids that make this hexagon. So you can see it a little bit better. Here's a hexagon, okay? And I have my trapezoids right here to help us, all right? So as you can see, if I were to cover this whole hexagon and I lay a trapezoid, one trapezoid is half of a hexagon. Two trapezoids make a whole hexagon. So that is what this first sentence is trying to tell you, boys and girls. So we are basically showing you how a whole is represented and how a fraction of that whole is represented with a different shape. Okay? So the unit fraction of this hexagon is 1/2 and 1/2 because two halves make a whole. Okay, so let's go to the second sentence right here. So we have a rhombus. So a rhombus is 1/3 of a hexagon because it takes three rhombuses to cover a hexagon. So here are my rhombuses. Let me get to the side really quick. There we go. So we have our whole hexagon. So boys and girls, as you are watching, okay, so we have to match. So we have 1/3 of a hexagon, 2/3 of a hexagon, and then the third and last piece makes a whole hexagon. So this is just another visual to help you recognize how fractions make up a whole number. One whole to be exact. So the unit fraction of this shape, 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 makes a whole hexagon. All right, last one right here. Triangle. So triangle is 1/6 of a hexagon because it takes 6 triangles to cover a hexagon. So it takes 6 hexagons to make one whole. So let's test it out, making sure we're matching everything perfectly. So this is 1/6 of a hexagon, 2/6 of a hexagon, 3/6 of a hexagon. Oh, notice that 3 triangles make half of the hexagon. Then we have 4/6 of a hexagon, 5/6 of a hexagon, and 1/6 of a hexagon. So let me take this carefully, transfer it over. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, to make one whole using 1/6 unit fraction makes a whole hexagon. So boys and girls, this is just another visual to kind of help you understand how fractions work. Okay? So now, the direction says each student will need 1 yellow hexagon, 4 red trapezoids, 3 rhombuses, and 6 triangles. I know that most of you don't have this at home, and that is okay. So you guys are just going to visually watch what I have, okay? If you don't have it, that is okay. So you're just going to be watching the video and following along with me, okay? So before we move on, I just want you to see all the different types of fractions that make up a whole. Okay? So this is a whole. What makes up this whole is 1/3. So each piece is 1/3. Each piece here is a half. Each piece here is 1/6. Just a quick review before moving on, okay? All right, here we go. Just gonna scooch this to the side. All right. I'm just gonna move in. There we go. Okay. So number 1 says draw or trace a hexagon below. Show and shade half of the hexagon. So boys and girls, obviously, most of you do not have this, and that's okay. So that's why it said you can trace, or you can just free draw it. So you have a visual right here to kind of help you. And I'm going to free draw it so that you guys know that it's okay. All right, so I'm going to do goes like that, that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. See, I didn't do it perfectly, and that's okay. Okay. All right. And then it says the second part right here, show and shade half of the hexagon. Well, using the visuals up here, I know that half of the hexagon, so I'm just going to take this visual right here, and so I'm going to shade half. Okay, I'm going to try and match mine, so like that, okay. All right, so then I would just draw a line halfway and shade one side of it. And that is all we are doing, because this picture represents half of the hexagon. This key is to help you do these problems at home, okay, boys and girls? All right, let's do number 2 now. Draw or trace a hexagon below, so same thing. So we'll do a little bit bigger. There we go. And then like that. Show and shade 2/3 of a hexagon. Okay, so going back up here, thirds was using a rhombus. Okay, so make this easier on myself. Boys and girls, you're just watching me. So making a third. So that's where the blue rhombuses come in. All right, so I'm just going to put 1 here because that's 1/3. Then adding another third makes 2/3. So looks like I need to color the blue part. So we're going to match that. So I'm going to go here, make that shape, make that shape. Okay, and then it says to shade. Okay, so this hexagon is shaded into 2/3. So boys and girls, it is really important to make sure that you're reading the directions very carefully, because sometimes they might say, how much of this hexagon is not shaded? They might try and change it up on you. So we know that the shaded part of this hexagon is 2/3. But what's the fraction of the part that is not shaded? 1/3. Yes, so 1/3 of this hexagon is not shaded. 2/3 of the hexagon is shaded. So depending on what the question is asking you, boys and girls, that's where you really need to pay attention and read the directions carefully. All right? People like to trick, okay? These on tests, especially for next week, because you have a fraction test next week, next Thursday to be exact, they like to trick you. And they're trying to make sure that you're paying attention and reading every single sentence carefully, okay? All right, so that was the focus portion of today's lesson. Now you are going to be, hopefully you've already printed out the other part of our lesson for today, which is the guided portion. It's 2 pages, which looks like this. And this is the part of the video, boys and girls, where you are going to be following along with me. You are doing the problems with me in this video, okay? So you have this in front of you right now while you're watching. And yes, you're going to have to pause every now and then to make sure that you are keeping the same pace with me, okay? Here we go. Number 1. At the bowling alley, Sam's ball knocked over 2 pins out of the group of 6. Which unit fraction describes the amount of pins that Sam's ball knocked over? Okay. So let's go back to the first sentence. Okay. At the bowling alley, Sam's ball knocked over 2 pins out of the group of 6. Remember, when we are doing a fraction, the denominator, the bottom number, tells us the total amount we are working with. Boys and girls, what number is the total amount that we are working with? 6. There were 6 pins out of the entire bowling alley pins. So there were 6 pins total. Now, boys and girls, the top number of our fraction told us which unit fraction describes the amount of pins Sam's ball knocked over. How many did Sam knock over? How many pins did Sam knock over? 2. So our fraction for this problem is 2/6. So let's double check our answers here. A, 2/3. Nope, because 3, there wasn't a total of 3 pins, there was a total of 6, so that's a no. B, 2/6. There's our answer. But let's just double check always to be sure. C, it says 2/7. There was no 7. Makes no sense. D, 5. There was no 5. There were 6 total. Always pay attention to the numbers on top and numbers on the bottom, boys and girls. Don't get tricked, okay? Read everything carefully. Moving on to 2. The figure below is composed of small squares. So we have a rectangle, and the rectangle is divided evenly into 2, 4, 6, 8 squares. Okay. Based on the model, which statement is true? Okay, let's go on. A, the shaded part, notice what it's telling us. The shaded part of the figure is 2/8 because it takes 8 small squares to compose the figure. Well, let's see. How many parts are shaded? 2. 1, 2. Okay, this could be our problem, but let's double check the total. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This could be our answer. I'm just going to put a check mark by it just to make sure. Let's check B. The shaded, again, the shaded part of the figure is 1/8 because it takes 8 small square to compose the figure. Well, how many shaded? We have 1 shaded and 2 shaded. This one says 1/8, so 1 is shaded. That makes no sense, so B is no. C, again, the shaded part of the figure is 4/8 because it takes 8 small squares to compose the figure. Well, how many is actually shaded? 1, 2. 4, 2? No, makes no sense. Let's go here. The shaded part, again, reading everything carefully, of the figure is 2/3. because it takes 3 small squares to compose the figure. Are there 3 small squares in here? No. What's our total? It is 8. D is not our answer, so A is our correct answer. Boys and girls, you see how I was talking you through the thought process, reading everything out loud and double checking my work. That is what you need to do when you are on your own, boys and girls. Always be thinking, always be reading and making sure that you are picking the correct one based off of the evidence that are given to you. Use the pictures, use the numbers to help guide you. Last page, and then you'll be going off on your own. See if I can zoom this in a little bit better. There we go. Whoop. Not too crazy. There we go. Okay. 3. Which drawing shows 3/4 shaded? Okay. Let's look at A. A looks a little odd because we have a small little sliver here that's cut, and then we have 1, 2, 3 other bigger parts. Don't let this trick you, because when we are using fractions, it's equally divided. Is this rectangular shape divided equally into 4 pieces? No. This is not our answer, because when we are working with fractions, everything has to be equally the same. This is not equally the same to these parts. Yes, 3/4 of it is shaded, but it's wrong because it's not equally divided. So that's why this is no. Don't let this confuse you, boys and girls. It's really important you pay attention to this part particularly. Now again, B. We have a triangle. A triangle cannot, with this fraction, with this particular fraction, it cannot, the way that it's been drawn, cannot, and I'm repeating myself on purpose, be divided evenly. Because look, this piece is not the same as this piece, and it's not so these 2 pieces are the same, but this piece is not the same as these 2. So, with that being said, this cannot be our answer. Yes, 3/4 of it is shaded, but they're not equally divided. This one was not equally divided as well, so that's why that is new. Okay? Make sure you're paying attention to this. C. Look at this square. This square is perfectly equally cut into smaller squares. 3 of the squares are shaded, 1 is not. There's a total of 4. That is why C is correct. Because in order for fractions to work, every single piece has to be the exact same size. Otherwise, it is not a real fraction and you cannot do the math. Those are just the rules. We have to follow them. 4 and 5. 4 and 5 is basically what we did at the beginning of this video. And here we go. 4. Trace a hexagon below. Show and shade 2/3 of a hexagon. Okay. So, make my hexagon here. All right. 2/3. So if I were to go back 2/3, that was the trapezoids. Okay, so let's get my hole. Let me zoom out just a little bit. There we go. All right, and let's fill in 2/3. So matching 1/3, 2/3. Okay, using that as a guide to help me. It's not going to be perfect because it's hand-drawn, and that's okay. 2/3 are shaded of the whole. Very good. How many of this is not shaded? What is the unit fraction that is not shaded? 1/3. Very good. 5. Again, draw or trace a hexagon. Okay. Show and shade 5/6 of a hexagon. Ooh, a little different this time. Okay. So, got our hole, and we're going to be working with 6, and that was the triangles. So make sure you're watching along with me. We have 1/6 of a hole, 2/6 of a hole. Ooh, losing my paper. 3/6 of a hole, 4/6 of a hole, 5/6 of a hole. Notice how I am adding to get up to the whole number, which is going to be 6, because that's how many equal pieces it was divided into. Okay, so making sure I'm drawing this right. So we got 1. Okay, there we go, there we go, there we go. So just matching the colors here. Okay, 5/6 of the hexagon is shaded. 1/6 is not shaded. All right, boys and girls. This concludes today's lesson on fractions using pictorial models. So now you're going to go back into Schoology and complete the following assignments. Again, if you are still struggling with this concept, make sure to rewatch this video again. Then you can come back and see Mrs. Strasbaugh at 9 a.m. She will continue to help you with any questions you have. It's been a pleasure teaching you today, and I will talk to you next time. Bye!